$1.2 million. That was the number that rang out in the courtroom, but to me, it wasn't just money. It was justice. After 2 years of being pushed down, of having the sweat and blood I worked for stolen from me. The sharp, dry crack of the gavel echoed against the old wooden walls, making the entire room hold its breath. The cold light from the fluorescent bulbs poured down onto the witness stand, glinting off the thick stack of files in front of me. In the air lingered the mixed scent of aged wood and freshly opened paper, pungent and faintly musty. I clenched my hands under the table, forcing my breath to stay steady. Across from me, Harris, once my boss, sat motionless, his face tense, his eyes avoiding mine. His attorney, David Clark, tried to keep his composure, but his fingers were twisting the edge of the paper until it curled. The judge took the sheet of paper the jury had just handed over. His eyes scanned the short lines that carried the weight of the entire case. He drew in a breath, then spoke. "Shh, Judge! Judge! Award to the plaintiff, $1,200,000. A brief murmur rippled through the courtroom, then silence fell again. I swallowed hard, my throat dry and burning. "Me, Your Honor, thank you." I heard the faint creak of the chair on the other side. The defense attorney leaned toward Harris, his voice low but clear enough for me to hear. "Defense attorney, we just lost everything." In that moment, something inside me broke open, not because of the money, but because someone had finally told them out loud that what they did was wrong. But I also knew that to reach this moment, I had endured days when every hour of overtime I worked was turned into a zero on my paycheck. Days when I came home just before dawn, my hands numb from the cold, without a single penny of fair pay. But to get here, I had to live through the days when every extra hour I worked was turned into nothing. I am 38 years old and have worked as a night shift supervisor at a food packaging plant in Texas for over 12 years. The job wasn't glamorous, but I took pride in doing it well and always meeting deadlines, whether it was a morning or night shift. The company I worked for was a large family-owned business with over 200 employees. On the surface, everyone would say it was a place where people are like family, with walls full of holiday party photos and Employee of the Month awards. But anyone who had been there long enough knew that behind those smiles lay a high-pressure machine, full of stress and legal loopholes that newcomers were never taught. I still remember my first day at the plant. My brand new uniform smelled of fresh fabric, the stitching still stiff. Harris, who at the time was a respected figure everyone looked up to, came over, shook my hand firmly, and said, "Welcome to the family." I believed him. I thought this would be a place I would stay for life, where my sweat would be rewarded with recognition and stability for my family. But I was wrong. The family he talked about was only kind when you were profitable. Once you became a cost, they would find a way to cut you off. I'd given everything I had to this company. One Christmas, when a crucial delivery was at risk due to system malfunctions, I stayed at the plant for 72 straight hours, supervising and directly packing to make sure everything went out on time. Another time, the main packaging machine broke down, threatening to halt the entire line for a day. I didn't wait for a technician. I fixed it temporarily in 2 hours, saving the company $40,000 in losses. Harris patted my shoulder and smiled. "You're one of us." We will never forget this. But the work at the plant didn't just take my strength. It also took away the moments I should have spent with my family. My wife worked night shifts at a small restaurant, and her son was only 8. Rent, utilities, and my son's school expenses meant every dollar had to be counted. Whenever I got home, my son was asleep, and my wife was preparing to leave for work. The house was always quiet, with only the work schedule on the fridge showing who would be home when. Gah! There were nights I ate dinner alone around midnight, listening to the ticking clock in the dark kitchen, wondering if the overtime hours were worth missing family meals. I soon realized those promises existed only as long as I was profitable for them. Even as a newcomer, I had heard whispers from longtime employees. Once, during a break in the backyard, an old coworker leaned in, speaking low as if afraid anyone could hear. "No one beats Harris here. You better not get involved with money matters." He walked away immediately, leaving me holding a cold cup of coffee. At the time, I just laughed it off, thinking it was newbie advice. Many years later, sitting in the courtroom, I finally understood it was an ominous warning I should have heeded from day one. Harris, over 50, spoke smoothly and knew how to charm customers, but with employees, it was different. People called him sweet talk, iron hand, smile at you today, slash your pay tomorrow. My lawyer, Rosa Martinez, was a small woman with a resolute gaze. She had won many labor lawsuits in Texas, especially those involving wages and working hours. From our first meeting, she said, "If you tell the truth and have evidence, I'll fight for you to the end." On the other side was David Clark, a lawyer famous not for eloquence but for his ability to drag cases out until the plaintiff gave up. Many who sued Harris had fallen into this exact trap. The simmering conflict began when the company applied a new method for calculating overtime. They lumped all extra hours into base pay, making the payroll look clean and legally compliant on paper, but in reality, it eliminated any additional pay required by law. Anyone who questioned it received the same response. This is the new directive from management. It applies to everyone. Harris often praised me in front of others. After I saved the production line worth $40,000, he shook my hand and said, "You're the most trusted person I have." I felt proud at the time. But I didn't know that this trust would later become an excuse to pile on more work, forcing me into grueling shifts without proper pay. Whenever I asked about overtime, he would just smile. "You work for the company will take care of you." But what the company took care of me turned out to be more work, more responsibility, and slowly shrinking numbers on my paycheck. At first, I thought it was just an accounting adjustment that would be corrected. But over time, as overtime hours were cut month after month, I realized this was not a mistake, it was a plan. The first warning signs appeared quietly, almost innocuously, but they hit me like a punch to the stomach. When I received my March paycheck, I noticed something strange. 26 hours of overtime had disappeared. 26 hours I had worked, meticulously recorded in my notebook, were completely absent from the payroll. I approached the accountant, trying to keep my tone casual. "Hey, could you double-check this? It seems my overtime hours are missing." She avoided my gaze and spoke softly, almost as if afraid I might misunderstand. "Orders from above! Don't ask too many questions!" Those words didn't just shock me, they also set off an alarm in my head. Something was wrong, and I needed to know exactly what. I sent emails to HR and management requesting an official explanation. Days passed with no response. I tried again. Still nothing. Soon after, I was reassigned shifts. The daytime shift I had requested for family reasons was suddenly replaced with night shifts. At first, I thought it might be a coincidence, perhaps they were short-staffed, but the pattern became undeniable. Every time I inquired about missing overtime, my work conditions were made more difficult. Then it happened again. A new month, a new paycheck, and overtime was missing once more. The numbers on my paycheck didn't match reality. My bank account started shrinking, tightening the financial rope around daily life. The personal impact was immediate. My son, who loved after-school classes, had to drop out because I couldn't afford the tuition. My wife picked up extra shifts at her restaurant to make ends meet. Our home felt quiet and empty. I remember one evening standing in the kitchen, holding a bill in one hand and half a slice of bread in the other, wondering how we would survive. Sleep became a rare luxury. Each night I woke drenched in sweat, heart pounding, replaying conversations and payroll numbers in my mind. Fear of losing my job battled with rising anger inside me. I knew speaking up carried risk, but staying silent would let injustice continue and affect others. One night, my wife broke the silence that had settled over the house. Her voice was soft but firm. "Are you sure you don't want to just let this go?" I looked at her, exhausted and worn, but resolute. "If I let it go, they'll do this to everyone, and no one will know." Her eyes filled with concern, but she nodded. She understood the burden I was about to carry. Tensions escalated when my first warning letter arrived. A typed letter on company letterhead accused me of disrupting team unity and creating tension among colleagues. Rumors began spreading that my position was at risk, that I might be fired. The message was clear: speaking up would have consequences. But rather than instilling fear, the letter ignited an unshakable resolve in me. The time for silence had passed. I documented everything: working hours, sent emails, payroll discrepancies, and notes from conversations. Every piece of evidence became a stepping stone for an unavoidable decision. Memberer. I would fight back, no matter the personal cost. One day, while reviewing my paycheck, I noticed an odd number, an overtime entry altered from my notebook. My heart raced. I knew that bringing it up immediately could result in warning letters, shift changes, or worse. But I also knew this would be crucial evidence for what lay ahead. I took out my phone, photographed every paycheck, and carefully marked each missing hour, each subtly divided amount. Every image, every annotation was a piece of the injustice the company was trying to hide. Inside, I felt both fear and determination. I hadn't submitted anything, hadn't confronted the accountant or management. But I knew that one day, these numbers would be irrefutable proof, the foundation for standing up not just for myself, but for all employees being exploited in silence. I realized that missing overtime wasn't just an administrative mistake. It was a deliberate, systematic attempt to take advantage of employees. Each altered paycheck, each shift reassignment, each silent reply, all formed a network of intimidation, and I was trapped at its center. One morning, examining my payroll, I found a strange note: change made by accounting department. No further explanation was given, which made me uneasy. Looking closely at each item, I realized my overtime hours weren't just cut. They were split into multiple entries, making it difficult for anyone glancing quickly to notice. This wasn't an oversight. It was a sophisticated trick to reduce costs without detection. It didn't stop there. The company began installing cameras in work areas, monitoring not just the production line but every step and small gesture. Records on individual performance were constantly updated. Every time I stepped away or took a break, it was noted. I felt like every breath, every move was being watched. These small but insidious changes made the workplace more stressful than ever. Each time I questioned missing overtime or intended to ask the accountant, the presence of cameras and detailed records forced me to weigh my words and actions. The pressure was invisible, yet powerful. My heart raced constantly, my eyes strained, as if facing a challenge I didn't know when I'd be punished for. All these details, the vague notes on paychecks, divided overtime entries, excessive monitoring, wove a sophisticated web, making employees feel lost, powerless, and almost forced to remain silent. I realized the company wasn't just cutting pay, they were creating a control mechanism that made speaking up dangerous. Work pressure wasn't limited to numbers or surveillance. It seeped into personal life, corroding every precious moment with family. I had to skip my son's birthday, a day we should have spent together celebrating. Instead, I sat at the computer, recording missing overtime hours and sending emails, weighed down with anxiety. My wife canceled her much-anticipated workshop to cover extra shifts for me. I missed an important parent-teacher meeting to discuss my child's progress. These seemingly minor events were moments that could never be recovered. I clearly remember one afternoon, standing at my son's classroom door, watching him wave quickly, his innocent eyes not understanding why I wasn't there. I forced a smile, hiding the pain in my heart. My chest felt constricted, helplessness creeping in. These personal losses were not just financial, they were the cost of family happiness, trust, and connection. Each missed class, each opportunity my wife gave up, reminded me that I was caught between responsibility to the company and love for my family. The pressure was suffocating. Each loss only strengthened my resolve. Every sacrifice was proof of injustice. Every forced smile of my son reminded me I couldn't stay silent. Otherwise, the pain would continue for myself and my loved ones. Emotional pressure at that time was overwhelming. Each long night, every missed family meal, each forfeited holiday all led to this confrontation. I couldn't continue ignoring the gap between what the company promised and what they actually delivered. Looking back, the chain of events played out almost cinematically. Missing overtime, initial suspicion, HR silence, ignored formal requests, growing frustration, shift, changes, escalation and difficulty, overtime missing again. Financial strain, warning letters and rumors, emotional breaking point. When the warning letter arrived, my mind was set. I would challenge the injustice, not only for myself but for others who might be exploited in silence. Every sleepless night, every whispered warning from colleagues, every moment I sacrificed to keep the operation running, all crystallized into one truth. If I didn't stand up now, this pattern would continue. And standing up meant entering a fight I knew would be grueling, exhausting, and uncertain. But I couldn't ignore it any longer. Missing overtime, broken promises, subtle punishments. These were no longer just numbers or policies. They were personal attacks on my dignity, on my dedication, and on the trust I had placed in a company I once considered a second family. The stage was set. Injustice had been exposed. Pressure had been applied. And for the first time in years, I felt both fear and clarity of purpose, the fear of retaliation, and the lucid understanding of why I had to act. The next step was unavoidable. I would take the company to court. The first meeting with my lawyer was so tense it felt like stepping into a war room. Rosa, with sharp yet calm eyes, placed a file and several legal documents on the table. "Do you have evidence?" she asked, her gaze cutting like a knife. I nodded, my voice steady despite the tension. "I have all the timesheets and even the photos from the security cameras." She leaned back, a faint smile appearing as if confirming a silent suspicion. "We have a strong case, but it all depends on how we play this card." I swallowed hard. "Card? The card that proves intentional wrongdoing," Rosa explained. "If we can prove it was deliberate, we won't just recover the lost overtime pay, we'll expose the system they've built to manipulate employees." Her words sent a chill down my spine. This was no longer just about money. This was about accountability and justice. I realized the stakes were far higher than I had imagined. Then the obstacles appeared, subtle but relentless. A colleague, initially ready to confirm my account, backed out after a private meeting with Harris. They returned with a nervous smile and a vague explanation. "They promised me a raise if I, The unspoken weight hung heavily in the room. I felt my resolve falter, recognizing the subtle power of the company's influence. Next, some of the payroll records I relied on mysteriously disappeared from the system. Pages I had carefully logged vanished entirely. Digital traces seemed erased or at least hidden. My stomach tightened with frustration and fear. This was no trivial matter. There was history here. Rosa dug deeper and discovered that Harris had faced similar lawsuits before, quietly settling to avoid attention. I realized I was stepping into a pattern already rehearsed, a sophisticated company strategy that both scared me and steeled my resolve. Then the breakthrough came, the card we had been waiting for. An internal email buried in the system, sent by Harris to the accounting department. Process the OT hours like last month. Make sure nothing leaks out. Seeing those words hit me like a bolt of lightning. This was no accident. It was a deliberate plan to manipulate payroll and conceal the truth. The purpose was clear. The email became the key to the case, the evidence that could turn everything around. Rosa examined it closely, her eyes sharp. This proves intentional action. This is what we've been looking for. Everything else, missing timesheets, threats, silence, is part of the same system. But the road to court was still long. Every new discovery carried waves of tension. I wondered, presenting this email now, would I face retaliation? Would the company try to discredit me or claim the evidence was fabricated? During preparation, Rosa advised a cautious strategy. We can't lay all our cards on the table at once. Build a timeline, record every interaction, every email, every altered timesheet. The more comprehensive the file, the harder it is for them to argue coincidence or accident. I spent many nights reviewing files, cross-checking each shift, each payment, each reassignment. The process was exhausting. Every photo, every email, every conversation became a puzzle piece. A step toward a case that could not be ignored. The psychological pressure was immense. I felt the invisible weight of potential retaliation. Harris wasn't just some distant figure. He had networks, strategies, and history. Every email I sent, every inquiry I made could trigger another wave of subtle threats. It was exhausting to maintain composure while continuing to appear at work and prepare for legal battle. Even as I meticulously documented every injustice, a simmering fear remained. Would the courts see it as sufficient? Would the intentional manipulations hidden in plain sight carry enough weight against a company experienced in concealing misconduct? Rosa kept me prepared. She guided me through mock sessions, refining answers for potential questions, emphasizing key evidence. Remember, she said, we are not just fighting for your overtime. We are fighting a system designed to quietly oppress employees. Keep that in mind in court. It adds moral weight to your case. I realized this was bigger than me. Every injustice meticulously documented, every moment of intimidation was a symptom of a systemic problem. By standing up, I was not only protecting myself but also warning others who might be quietly exploited. Days turned to nights as I compiled, photographed, and organized evidence. Harris's email became the centerpiece, the irrefutable proof that the discrepancies were not random. Under Rosa's guidance, the file became a compelling narrative: lost overtime, manipulated payroll, subtle threats, all pointing to deliberate wrongdoing. The pressure grew with every step. The court date loomed, and the anticipation weighed heavily. But amid the fear, a quiet determination began to take root. I understood that preparation was power. Detailed records, carefully cross-checked, hidden strands of truth, all were weapons in a battle I could not avoid. For the first time, my fear of retaliation was balanced by a clear sense of purpose. The injustice was exposed, the evidence was solid, and the moment of confrontation was inevitable. Standing at the threshold of the courtroom, I carried not only my own fate but also the responsibility to expose the hidden schemes that had trapped me, and many others, in silence. The card was in our hands. Now it was only a matter of timing, precision, and courage. Every morning, I wondered what surprises awaited. Would the next email be another dagger or an unexpected call from HR? The pressure was suffocating, not just the work, but the very act of existing in this environment. Every colleague became an unknown. Who would stand with me? Who would turn away for a promise or under subtle coercion? I felt Harris's eyes on me through the screens, through every movement in the office, through every small conversation. The fear of retaliation had no form, no words, just subtle signals hidden behind social smiles or overly kind inquiries. In those moments, I felt isolated, like standing on an invisible battlefield. Even as Rosa reassured me, the fear lingered. One wrong move and all evidence, all effort could collapse, leaving me to pay the price with my career, reputation, even my mental health. Yet that fear also strengthened my resolve. I knew that if I did not stand firm, gather every piece of evidence, and maintain my composure under pressure, justice would remain obscured. And in my mind, Harris's email, the reminder of their intricate plan, became motivation. It was not just proof, it was a call to rise above fear, to stand up not just for myself, but for anyone who might fall into the same trap. Harris was not present physically, yet he operated a sophisticated system controlling every move. Each email carried subtle warnings. Secret instructions were sent to subordinate managers, guiding how to adjust my hours without leaving a trace. Once, my phone rang with a call from HR, the voice calm but loaded with implication. "We heard you've been working too hard, just a reminder." No one said stop, yet each word was a silent blade. My actions were monitored, every step controlled. Harris didn't need to appear to exert pressure. He ran a network from middle management to other employees, all manipulated to protect his interests. The system did more than falsify data. It manipulated minds, forcing employees to doubt coworkers, doubt themselves, and fear every decision. Every time I found a missing timesheet or a colleague turned away after a promised raise, I realized this was no coincidence. It was a deliberate sequence designed to overwhelm, weaken morale, and make workers doubt themselves. The email from Harris, "Process the OT hours like last month. Make sure nothing leaks out," was no longer just legal evidence. It was proof of the sophisticated system. Everything from disappearing records to suggestive HR calls was part of the plan to control and manipulate. To win, I would have to expose not just one act of deceit, but the entire network, revealing how they systematically oppressed employees. Deadlines loomed like a hovering blade. I must submit all evidence by the weekend while still working every day, keeping my preparations secret. Every morning was a race, checking emails, reviewing files, comparing timesheets, all while completing daily tasks. Time pressure intensified everything. One overlooked email, one unverified detail, one moment of hesitation could ruin the strategy. Every second emphasized the conflict between daily responsibilities and the pursuit of justice. I even devised ways to conceal my preparations, leaving my desk, using my personal computer, drafting documents at a cafe, every step cautious, fearing Harris or the managers. Time was not only an enemy, but also a test of resolve and endurance. Each passing day, the deadline approached, the tension ratcheted higher. The reader can feel it. The pressure came not only from Harris or the system, but from limited time, daily duties, and the isolation of keeping secrets. As Rosa and I prepared each step for court, a bigger thought persisted. This was not just my problem. Every lost timesheet, hidden email, threatened colleague, all were pieces of a sophisticated system of abuse. I reminded myself, if I win, it won't just be me compensated. The corrupt system, the subtle mechanisms Harris and his allies have built over the years, will be exposed to the light. That thought weighed heavily in my mind, intensifying the pressure. This was a battle not for overtime or pay alone, but against a deeply ingrained culture of oppression. Mock trials with Rosa became even more intense. When recounting the colleague's reversal, she said, "Ho!" This scene is evidence of systemic. The courtroom was bathed in bright light, almost giving off a cold, sharp sensation. The polished wooden floor reflected every step of the jurors as they walked in, each tap echoing like a heartbeat throughout the room. The air was thick with anticipation, an invisible tension weighing down on everyone present. I could feel every gaze, sharp, scrutinizing, and unwavering following me, making my palms drenched in sweat. This was more than a trial, it was a psychological test. I had spent countless nights preparing for this moment, analyzing every email, cross-checking each spreadsheet, noting every anomaly in the payroll system. Every minute, every detail had been meticulously documented. But nothing truly prepares you for the moment. The courtroom door opens and you realize that everyone is watching, waiting to see if you will crumble. The judge entered first, adjusting his robe with silent authority. The gavel remained on the desk, still yet commanding, a reminder that any mistake could have immediate consequences. The jurors took their seats with precision, like a disciplined unit on a mission, their eyes scanning the room. Noting every gesture, every heartbeat, my own heart pounded, a relentless drum drowning out almost everything around me. My heart was beating so hard I felt my entire body vibrate with each thump. My knees trembling slightly as I stepped up to the evidence podium. Cold sweat ran down my neck, my hands shook as I held the documents, and my tongue felt stuck to the roof of my mouth, making speaking difficult. My breath was rapid, mingling with the scent of fresh printed paper and waxed wood, heightening my awareness of the heavy pressure bearing down on me. Every step, every gesture was scrutinized by the piercing eyes of the jury, making me feel as if I were walking a tightrope over empty space. Clark, my opponent, stood before me, his gaze sharp and unyielding. "Do you have proof that Mr. Harris gave direct instructions?" he asked. I took a deep breath, trying to swallow the lump in my throat, my hands still trembling as I opened the folder. I answered, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, this is a printed email with his electronic signature." The courtroom seemed to fall silent for a few seconds, only the sound of my heartbeat and the whisper of wind through the window. Sweat ran down my neck, my breathing still rapid, but the juror's eyes never left the document. I knew that every small detail, every heartbeat, every word now determined the fate of the trial. The entire courtroom seemed to exhale simultaneously. The judge glanced over the email, quickly but decisively. "The evidence is admitted," he said. The soft rap of the gavel signaled recognition. My heart raced. The first line of defense had failed. Then, the unexpected happened. A ripple of murmurs spread across the room as an accounting staff member emerged from the back. Someone I only knew through whispered office stories. She stepped forward, hands trembling, glancing at the judge, then at me, and finally at Clark. I was instructed to adjust the payroll figures," she admitted, her voice shaky but growing steadier. "It wasn't a mistake. I was coerced by management, Mr. Sky. Harris himself ordered it to manipulate overtime data." Time seemed to slow. My chest tightened as if encircled by steel bands. Her words struck me physically. The system I had been battling, the invisible web of coercion, was now exposed in the public courtroom. Every sleepless night, every meticulous spreadsheet, every tense consultation with Rosa, nothing had been in vain. Clark squinted. He tried to mask panic with a calm tone, but a slight tremor betrayed him. "So you're saying these actions were intentional?" he asked, as if repeating it could make it unreal. "Yes," the accountant confirmed. "I was instructed to follow orders precisely. There was no error, only deliberate intent to conceal overtime and manipulate payroll." She clenched her hands, took a deep breath, and looked directly at the jury. "And I am willing to testify to the entire process." A mixed feeling of fear and vindication surged through me. Fear, because standing there meant the eyes of a powerful network, Harris's network, were upon me, ready to strike at the slightest vulnerability. Vindication, because the truth was no longer solely my burden. It had been validated by someone who had directly experienced it. Rosa's face appeared in my mind, her calm but resolute eyes during our preparation sessions, guiding me to record every interaction meticulously. She had led me through the storm to reach this point, and now the storm was clearing. The judge called a short recess to allow the jurors to review the admitted evidence. Whispers broke out, cautious but present. My mind raced, picturing the countless hours I had spent piecing together the puzzle. Every deleted timesheet, every hesitant colleague, every subtle threat, all had now formed a clear picture, exposing a system built for manipulation and oppression. As the trial resumed, tension mounted. Clark tried to regain control, launching objections, questioning the reliability of the accountant, scrutinizing the email preservation process. Each objection was a wave, but I stood firm, answering solely with meticulously recorded facts, revealing no emotion that could be exploited. Then came the moment I both anticipated and feared: cross-examination. Clark's questions were precise, clinical, aiming to shake the foundation of every testimony. He asked about dates, specific wording, internal communications. He searched for inconsistencies, hesitations, any gap in my presentation. Each question was like a blade probing the steadiness of my resolve. But I was prepared. Every email, spreadsheet, and witness statement had been rehearsed, cross-checked, verified. I responded clearly, concisely, and confidently. "Yes, the timestamp shows the email was sent on March 14th at 8:03 a.m., I stated. "Yes, I retained a digital copy on my personal drive. And yes, internal policy confirms that any deviation from standard payroll procedures must be approved. This approval, in this case, was deliberately bypassed." The jurors leaned slightly, their expressions unreadable between curiosity and judgment. I felt their focus, their attention to every word. This was not merely a trial, it was a revelation, and I was the conduit of the truth. Clark made his final move, suggesting it could have been a misunderstanding, that the manipulation was a system error or an internal miscommunication. A familiar tactic: sow doubt, create ambiguity, break the narrative. I held my ground. This email clearly directs handling of overtime as last month and ensures no disclosure. Is no ambiguity. This was intentional. The discrepancy was deliberate. My voice, steady and unwavering, cut through the space. The courtroom seemed to shrink, every ear tuned to the truth I had just presented. Silence enveloped the room. I could hear my heartbeat thundering, a vivid reminder that every second mattered. The accountant's testimony, combined with indisputable digital evidence, in that moment, the courtroom became so silent that I could hear every breath, every faint rustle of paper against the desk. The judge lifted the verdict, his eyes scanning the lines quickly. Then his voice rang out, precise yet decisive. "The plaintiff prevails. Damages awarded, $1,200,000. A ripple of sensation ran through me from head to toe. I covered my face, feeling as if all the pressure, every sleepless night, every moment of fear and tension had just shattered. Tears streamed down, warm and salty, mixed with an indescribable sense of relief. This was a victory not just for me, but for all those who had ever faced pressure or intimidation in silence. As the judge read the verdict, my heart seemed to stop for a moment, then pounded like war drums. Each beat so strong it felt like my chest was vibrating. My palms trembled, sweat beaded on my fingers, my head swirled, and my legs felt like lead, my body experiencing a 2-year-long physiological and psychological battle. After every tense night, every suspicious email, justice has finally arrived, but will it last? I asked myself internally. A mix of relief and anxiety coursing through me when the judge declared, "Damages awarded to the plaintiff, 1. 2 million, my tears flowed, but each drop was not only joy, it was the release of 2 years of endurance, hundreds of psychological shocks, and invisible pressures. I felt clearly that winning or losing mattered less than the fact that I had not bowed, that I had defended the truth to the end. I drew a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. My mind still spun, but each vein seemed filled with a strange energy, part relief, part warning that the battle was not over. Truth, now, was the strongest weapon, but fragile, needing patience and courage to protect. Around me, every gaze reflected this moment. Witnesses lowered their heads. Relieved yet tense, my lawyer inhaled deeply and squeezed my hand as if to transmit comfort and strength. Harris's face flushed red, his hands trembling as he held the documents, attempting to hide the collapse within. The jurors exchanged glances, leaning slightly, nodding softly, as if to say, "Yes, justice has been served." Across from me, Harris stood silently, face flushed, eyes fiery but unable to speak. His gaze darted around the room, trying to conceal the inner collapse. The lawyers around him remained silent, looking shocked and unsure how to react. The tension in the room was like a drawn bowstring, but now the balance had shifted toward me. The jurors exhaled in relief but maintained their stern demeanor. Every gaze in the room seemed to confirm one thing: the truth had won. I took a deep breath, focusing on every detail. The wooden floor, the cold light hitting my hair, the eyes of witnesses, both admiring and curious. Immediately, the ripple spread beyond the courtroom. Journalists at the courthouse quickly recorded every moment, cameras sweeping across my sweat-drenched face and elated expression. Social media and news sites erupted with headlines. Employee wins lawsuit against payroll manipulation. 1. 2 million awarded. Major investors and partners began withdrawing. Multi-million-dollar contracts canceled instantly. This was no longer just a personal lawsuit. It had become a shockwave through the company's entire system. I stared at the verdict, clearly feeling the calculation of the sum: 2 years of unpaid overtime, plus double penalties for intentional labor law violations. B! Each number on the page told a story of hardship, of pressures endured, of the justice I pursued daily. The combination of numerical evidence and witness testimony had now become an undeniable legal weapons. But amid the joy and relief, an unexpected twist appeared. Just a week after the victory was announced, I received a thick letter from Harris's law office. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. The letter, written in a cold, precise style, stated, "Harris would appeal," simultaneously accusing me of forging evidence. As I stepped out of the courtroom, foot on the hallway floor, my phone buzzed. An email from Harris appeared. "We have saved sensitive conversations you had with colleagues. The upcoming appeal will consider them." My heart froze. 2 years of tension I thought had ended, yet a single line dragged me back into the storm. Before I could gather myself, a message from an internal source appeared. "Harris is attempting to influence a juror in the upcoming appeal. Be careful." My heart pounded, each beat like an alarm. Sweat ran cold across my forehead. Palms trembled. Head spun. This was no longer just a victory. A new battlefield had opened, filled with subtle and unpredictable dangers. Inside the courtroom, the scene remained vivid in my mind. Harris, red-faced, hands trembling over documents, concealing his internal collapse. The jurors exchanged glances, confirming that justice had been served, at least for this trial. My lawyer inhaled deeply, gripping my hand, but both of us knew the real battle was far from over. Outside, the press and social media continued to erupt. The verdict clips spread widely. The company's stock fell, contracts canceled, HR under investigation. But now, with these new threats, public opinion was no longer only encouragement, it became pressure. Like thousands of eyes watching my every step, I sat alone in a nearby cafe, staring at the pen that had fallen during the verdict. It was a temporary period at the end of the current battle, but also a reminder that greater challenges lay ahead. Truth remained the strongest weapon, but it must be guarded with patience, courage, and sharp awareness against cunning schemes. And I reminded myself, winning the lawsuit was only the first step. Threatening emails, potential dangers, and unpredictable plots would make the next chapter of this battle one whose outcome I could not yet foresee. My heart pounded again, but this time it was a different tension, not fear before the court, but the stress of new battles. Truth, even when revealed, could still be challenged. Justice, even when temporarily won, must be continually defended. 2 years of effort were only the beginning. and I realized that determination and careful preparation were the only weapons to face the trials ahead. Yet in this moment, looking back on the journey, victory still filled me. I smiled, exhausted and drenched in sweat. I knew that no matter what tricks Harris employed, the evidence, the testimonies, and my resolve had created a precedent. It reminded everyone, if you stand for the truth, justice will follow you, no matter how arduous the journey. And in that moment, between the joy of victory and the forewarning of new trials, I silently told myself every step, every email, every testimony, every sleepless night, it was all worth it. Justice is not merely a ruling on paper, it is the result of persistence, courage, and an indomitable truth. The appeal letter lay on the table, the winning verdict in my hands, and I realized the story was far from over. But now, I was ready for whatever lay ahead. These moments had taught me that victory is sometimes only the beginning, but enough to light the path forward. The courtroom was empty now, but the echo of the verdict still lingered in my mind. 2 years of tension, hundreds of sleepless nights, every suspicious email, every scrutinizing glance, everything seemed to converge in that single moment. I took a deep breath, feeling my heartbeat both racing and slowly stabilizing, every vein in my body alive again. Joy and caution intertwined. Justice had finally arrived, but would it hold against the challenges yet to come? Looking back on my journey, I remembered every time I faced fear and pressure. Every time I stayed silent or ignored injustice, it spread further. And now, holding the judgment in my hands, I understood clearly, justice does not come on its own. You must stand up and claim it. It doesn't come from luck or passivity, it comes from courage, persistence, and the determination to protect the truth until the end. These moments also taught me a vital lesson. Never let fear silence you in the face of injustice. Fear can make us bow our heads, give in, and step back, but that silence only empowers the wrongdoer. When you speak up, when you act, you not only protect yourself, but also those who cannot protect themselves. Every step you take, every testimony, every piece of evidence is a building block for justice. Yet this victory, though sweet, was not the end. It was the beginning, proof that truth can prevail, but also a reminder that new challenges always lie ahead. I remembered Harris's eyes at the end of the trial, red, trembling, trying to hide his collapse, yet in that moment, I knew the real battle was still to come. Outside, in the late afternoon light, I sat alone in a cafe near the courthouse. Life went on around me, but inside, every sense was alert. The real battlefield had not ended. I watched the pen fall to the floor after the verdict, a temporary period for this phase, but also a reminder to prepare for the steps ahead. Truth remains the most powerful weapon, yet fragile, needing patience, clarity, and courage to protect it. In that quiet moment, I realized what mattered most. Standing up for the truth is not only a duty, but also a journey of self-growth. Every step, every email, every testimony, every sleepless night, they were all worth it because they made a difference. Today's victory was proof of the power of courage, showing that justice is not distant, it is the result of steadfast actions and unwavering resolve. But then, the calm lasted only a moment. Just as I inhaled deeply, ready to savor the moment, a chilling thought struck me. I thought it was all over, until another letter appeared in my mailbox. Once again, my heart raced, not from fear of the courtroom, but from realizing that new challenges were waiting. Victory was just the first step, and the road ahead remained long and full of surprises. I knew only with careful preparation and unwavering resolve could I face every scheme, every threat, and continue to defend the truth and justice I have fought for over the past 2 years.